to do his job, but also fill in where the federal government has failed. You can't disagree. That is one of the jobs of the federal government, is to protect national security. They aren't doing it. We've had to step in and do that, and the result has been reduced crime. It has been reduced crossings on the border. Interestingly enough, I even had an ICE official who, prior to Governor Perry really taking the leadership on this, didn't believe anyone in the government wanted to, and they were very lax. When he started working with those local law enforcement, all of a sudden it spurred ICE officials down there to realize somebody really cared. And they were supportive of him, and the results have been pretty phenomenal. Thank you. Debra Medina.
So, deploy the Texas military force to secure the border, stop the incentives, stop the illegal immigration, reduce tuition, stop the free health care. That is another state sovereignty fight. That is a federal legislation called EMTALA that we need to challenge here so that hospitals and emergency services providers write their own charity care policies and we quit offering free health care. And finally, so I guess that's 1, secure the border by deploying the military force. 2, stop the social incentives. And 3, prosecute and deport. We are hearing stories from law enforcement all over the state of Texas that we have illegal immigrants in our jails waiting prosecution and then not being deported even after that prosecution. Once the time is served, regardless of the country you're here from, you're a guest in Texas, you violate the law, you need to go home.
You have the next question. How will you protect the people of Texas from further federal government intrusion?
Boy, we've been talking about that for 13 months now. Thomas Jefferson said it's the unquestionable right of the state to determine when the federal government steps outside the bounds of the Constitution. I've been saying over the last week or 10 days, maybe we would have understood him better if he would have told us the unquestionable duty of the state. Texas has got to stand up. The rightful remedy, Jefferson and Madison said, the rightful remedy is nullification, interposition. And some have argued, oh, you can't do that, we've got case law. I said, you know, this isn't my message. It's James Madison's. I think he's the father of the Constitution. So if we've got a problem with that being a proper tool, maybe we don't understand the Constitution. The 10th Amendment says, all powers not delegated to the federal government are reserved to the states and the people. We nullify intrusion. We interpose against federal agencies, and it's ironic that after me being talking about getting the EPA out of Texas since November, the governor is now doing something about doing that. So we begin to interpose. The federal government certainly is in. It's almost like a cancerous malignancy in every organ of this state called Texas. And I believe it's going to take the wisdom of the minds of men to figure out where best strategically to engage that battle. I get a lot of excitement around Texas when we begin to talk about the EPA might ought to be our first site, but I think it's an approach like this, not a linear one where we do the EPA and then we do the Department of Education and then we do the Department of Commerce, but maybe all of them at once, looking for opportunity to interpose and nullify. Certainly, we issued a call to action on November the 8th, I believe, to get a bill in a special session nullifying health care right now. That is a travesty.
Tierney, would you like me to repeat the question? No, okay. Some might rely on the wisdom of men. I'm proud to say that we have a governor who really does appreciate and rely on the wisdom of God, because it's far better than anything that men can ever have. I would say this in terms of history as well, and I'm going to urge you to do something tonight. I don't know how many of you know David Barton. He lives just down the street in Toledo. He's one of the most noted historians, and his entire mission is to actually truly educate us on our history and the doctrines that really formed the foundation, all of which, of course, came from the Bible in and of themselves. But he has actually written a paper that I would encourage you to go to wallbuilders.org and look at that paper on how history has been taken out of context in the discussions around nullification. The appropriate way to handle federal intrusion is actually exactly what we're doing. Go back, we have a federal court system. Our founders put forth 3 branches of government, and when one gets out of control, we have another one as a check and a balance. And so we have sued the federal government. We have said no to the federal government. Rick Perry has a record of saying no. But you can't nullify something that doesn't exist. Rick Perry has said he will absolutely not stand for universal health care. And he, along with General Attorney Greg Abbott, have gotten together, and his urging, other governors are getting involved, and they are challenging and will challenge and look for every option possible to actually stand up and not only say no, and Texas will not hold the congressional budgetary bag one more time, but how do we go about doing that properly? If we really believe in the rule of law, then we have to follow the law. And that is what Governor Perry is doing in going after this with Greg Abbott, General Abbott, on a constitutional basis. Thank you. 1 minute.
I had a conversation with the Texas Attorney General's office, and I would agree that Greg Abbott and his team have done a tremendous job in defending Texas in the federal courts, but the gentleman there said to me, you know, Deborah, that's a great stump speech, but the reality is we've got 150 years of law. And I called him back and said, would you look at this case out of Arizona? Little county sheriff took Bill Clinton, the only non-sexual case Bill Clinton was ever involved in. And he won before the U.S. Supreme Court on the argument of state sovereignty. And I called the AG's office back and said, would you look at that case? I know we've got 150 years of case law, and you're telling me that the states can't stand up. It's a misnomer to think those 3 branches are going to check themselves in overstepping the Constitution. That's up to the states. That's why that 10th Amendment is there to provide that check. That case is from 1997. When the gentleman in the AG's office read it, he called me back and he said, that case is spot on for state sovereignty and defending against cases like nationalization of health care. We need to stand up. We need to fight. We haven't been doing that.
We have been doing that, and we took on the 10 Commandments issue in the U.S. Supreme Court. We did do that when not only I don't know, I'm from Houston. I don't remember if y'all remember a case where we had illegal aliens raped and killed 2 young girls. And quite frankly, we convicted them and we put them on death row. And the world came after us and said, you can't put them, they're not U.S. citizens. Even President Bush stood up. What did Texas do? We went up there and we stood alone. And we argued and said, we are a sovereign state. We determine what our laws are. And we won that case. Time after time after time, when we stand up, we have won. Governor Perry has a history of doing that. We have been winning. We will continue to win. As I said, Texas really is the conservative standard bearer, and we need someone who has not only the rhetoric, but who has the leadership and the experience in these very troubling times to do so.